Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is a pleasure to see you again in today's news program. Here, we and you will share and interact with the latest news and hottest events that are of interest to the public at home and abroad. Details will be available shortly.
On September 17th, the Kremlin announced that Russian President Vladimir Putin and Indian Prime Minister Narendra had a meeting to discuss bilateral relations and the situation surrounding the conflict in Ukraine. According to the Kremlin announcement, during the meeting, President Putin emphasized that the relations between Russia and India in modern history have always been friendly, based on the support of the peoples of the two countries. The two leaders expressed satisfaction with the current successful development of bilateral relations. Regarding the Prime Minister personally, Russian President expressed his appreciation for the leader's efforts in strengthening the special strategic partnership and affirmed that Moscow will continue to dialogue, build, and cooperate with New Delhi on bilateral, regional, and international issues. NDTV channel said that after the meeting, in an online post after X, the Indian Prime Minister expressed his thanks to his friend Vladimir Putin for the phone call to congratulate him on his 75th birthday. He also stressed that New Delhi is committed to further strengthening the special and privileged strategic partnership with Moscow on the Ukraine conflict. Prime Minister Modi made it clear that India is ready to contribute in every way toward a peaceful solution. The Kremlin said that the two leaders discussed preparations for the Russian president's visit to India in December this year. The last time President Putin and Prime Minister Muammar Gaddafi met was at the SEA summit in Tianjin, China, from October 31st to October 1st, where the two leaders reaffirmed their commitment to strengthening the special strategic partnership and discussed regional and global issues, including the recent developments in Ukraine. On September 17th, German Chancellor Friedrichsen told the Bundestag that Russia's repeated incursions into neighboring countries' airspace were part of Moscow's ongoing trend of sabotage and testing its borders. He also warned that a peace deal in Ukraine could not come at the expense of Kyiv's political sovereignty and territorial integrity. Any imposed peace deal, he said, would only encourage Russia to seek new targets, further destabilizing the region. Germany's warning comes amid a security situation on NATO's eastern flank that has been rocked by alleged Russian UAVs violating Romanian and Polish airspace. The Romanian Defense Ministry said on September 13th that F-16 jets had to be scrambled to intercept a low-flying Russian UAV as Moscow intensified attacks on infrastructure on the Ukrainian border. Rota said the object disappeared about 20 kilometers from the village of Chilia V, prompting local authorities to issue an evacuation warning. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky said data showed the Russian UAV had penetrated 10 kilometers into Romania and remained in NATO airspace for about 50 minutes. He called for further sanctions and strengthening collective defense. Poland said on March 10th that it had shot down a Russian UAV in its airspace with support from its NATO allies and deployed fighter jets and closed Lupin Airport due to the threat of attack that NATO said it would increase its defense capabilities on its eastern flank, while the Swedish Foreign Ministry strongly condemned the incident, pledging to stand by Romania.
Recently, in an interview with Espresso TV, Yuri Fedorenko, commander of the 429th Air Unmanned Combat Systems Battalion, said that Ukrainian forces had destroyed and flooded an underground pipeline near Kupiansk, which Russian soldiers used to secretly infiltrate the city in the Kharkov region. Russian soldiers moved through the underground pipeline, making it difficult for the enemy to detect. Due to the tense fighting situation on the front line, the Ukrainian army could not use technical equipment to destroy the pipeline. Therefore, they blocked the tunnel doors and used ammunition to destroy the structure. According to Mr. Fedorenko, a series of attacks near the Oskin River also destroyed the underground pipeline structure, causing flooding. However, the commander of the 429th Battalion did not rule out the possibility that the Russian army would restore the operation of the underground pipeline, so the Ukrainian side is closely monitoring the situation. According to him, if the enemy tries to drain the pipeline or repair it if it is not seriously damaged, the Ukrainian defense forces are ready to destroy it again. Earlier, on September 12th, Deep 8 analysts reported that Russian troops used a gas pipeline to deploy logistics to the outskirts of Kupiansk. This is the third time the Russian military has been reported to have used pipelines for covert Recently, in an interview with Espresso TV, Yuri Fedorenko, commander of the 429th Air Unmanned Combat Systems Battalion, said that Ukrainian forces had destroyed and flooded an underground pipeline near Kupiansk, which Russian soldiers used to secretly infiltrate the city in the Kharkov region. Russian soldiers moved through the underground pipeline, making it difficult for the enemy to detect. Due to the tense fighting situation on the front line, the Ukrainian army could not use technical equipment.
Recently, Jenny Mouse, a senior lecturer in international politics at Aberystwyth University in the UK, said that in the context of the conflict with Russia, Ukraine is trying to expand its diplomatic and economic influence to a new front, which is Africa. With newly established embassies and many trade initiatives, Kyiv is trying to win new allies and partners while weakening the economy of Moscow. However, this effort is facing the deep influence of Russia that has been built for decades. Since 2022, Ukraine has made significant steps in expanding its presence in Africa. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky also made his first official visit to the continent, starting with a state visit to South Africa in April this year. This is a strategic move reflected in the Kyiv's Africa 2022 strategy, which clearly aims to free Africa from Russian influence through diplomacy, economic ties, and public relations efforts. Accordingly, the Kyiv has opened 8 new embassies in West Africa since 2022, including in Mauritania, a strategically located country. On the military front, Ukrainian special forces were recorded operating in Sudan in 2024. In Mauritania, Ukraine also offered to share its battlefield experience and technological advances made in the war with Russia. These efforts are not only aimed at finding allies, but also at directly challenging the influence of Russian private military companies, which are active in more than 40 African countries. In addition to diplomacy, Ukraine is using its advantage in the agricultural sector to build economic ties. After the blockade of its ports in 2022, which caused a 30 million ton shortage of grain to Africa, Ukraine has quickly rebuilt its export capacity and has set a target of exporting 10 million tons of grain to Africa in 2024. In parallel with trade, Ukraine's humanitarian grain initiative has provided food aid to more than 8 million people in countries such as Congo, Ethiopia, Somalia, Nigeria, Kenya, Sudan, and Mauritania over the past 3 years. This not only helps address food security issues, but is also a way for Ukraine to demonstrate its value as a reliable partner, especially in the context of the U.S. administration's significant cuts in humanitarian aid. Despite Ukraine's strong moves, competing with Russia in Africa is an extremely difficult task. Moscow has a solid foundation from the Cold War era, when the Soviet Union established deep trade, technical assistance, and military cooperation with many newly independent countries. Today, Russia maintains twice as many embassies in Africa as Ukraine. Moscow also deploys a flexible soft power strategy through relentless public relations campaigns and cultural diplomacy. Russia projects itself as a global power that also takes Africa seriously. This message is often conveyed through social media in local languages, addressing relevant political, economic, and cultural issues, which resonates with those skeptical of the West. The challenge for Ukraine was evident from the start of the war. At an emergency session of the UN General Assembly in May 2022, only 28 of 54 African countries voted in favor of a resolution opposing Russia. Since then, the number of African countries siding with Russia at the General Assembly has increased, while support for Ukraine has declined. Some of Ukraine's efforts have even backfired. The 2024 report, which accused Ukraine of providing training and intelligence to T rebels in Mali, led Mali and Nizhny Novgorod to cut diplomatic ties with the Kyiv. The West African Economic Community ECOWAT also issued a statement opposing outside interference, as the Kyiv's efforts were seen as a cover to hide support for extremist groups. Meza said that convincing African leaders to abandon their long-term partnership with Russia is unrealistic, at least in the short term. However, this does not mean that Ukraine's efforts are in vain. The success of its food aid and trade programs shows that Africa responds positively when the Kyiv provides what it really needs. Rather than pushing Africans to choose between Russia and Ukraine, a longer-term vision focused on areas of mutually beneficial cooperation would be more effective. In short, by cultivating economic ties now, Ukraine could lay the foundation for a more sustainable post-conflict recovery, while also creating a large new agricultural market. While challenging Russia at its strongest points, soft power and military capabilities remains a difficult task. Building economic and humanitarian bridges could be a more effective way for Ukraine to win support on the continent.